In full flight, the Leader of the Opposition made a couple of comments that one at least of which is factually incorrect and one which you may wish to request a correction. On the first occasion he referred to the previous Labour-Green administration.
I'm sorry to inform the member, these are debating points. They're not points of order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallett.
Mr. Speaker, the one which I thought the member was going to raise was when he called the Greens hypocrites, sir, and that, or their stance hypocritical, and that is certainly out of order.
I'll give the member an opportunity to, with his point of order, to explain exactly what he wanted, but any comparison between agreements between parties, they're not points of order, they're debating points. Dr. Kennedy-Graham. Please explain your point of order.
The first point I was making was that there was an assertion, a factual assertion, that there had been a Labour-Green administration. That is factually incorrect.
No, these are debating points, and we will not entertain this further. That is a debating point. It is not a point of order.
Thank you for that clarification. Second point that I was going to raise was that the Leader of the House declared explicitly that those who avail themselves of certain minerals but who criticised their extraction from the earth were hypocritical. Could I ask for a clarification as to whether he was referring to any political party in that respect?
No, I'll ask the Honourable Gentleman.
Yes, I was, and I was referring to any political party who wants to oppose the consideration of these things. That is, I think, exactly as I've said it, but I also
thank you, that's enough. Thank you. He's withdrawn and apologised. The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr. Speaker, the member who's just resumed his speech spent 10 minutes trying to justify mining in national parks, and not once did he mention his or his government's commitment to any job creation. And that's because they haven't got any. That's because there is not an ounce in that whole member's body, not an ounce of commitment to doing anything towards addressing the fact that we now have 168,000 people in New Zealand who want to work, who get up in the morning, want to go to a job, but they haven't got a job to go to. Mr. Speaker, the other thing that member did, which I was surprised at, because in the past I've heard better contributions from him, he resorted to a tactic that I don't think this Parliament should accept, and that is when you run out of decent policy debates, you attack the person. You introduce red herrings, you start mocking the opposition, and you totally avoid having a serious policy debate. And in my view, Mr. Speaker, this Parliament should be better than that. Ken Graham took exception to it on behalf of the Green Party. Well, I think every single person in the country who was listening to that speech would have taken exception to it. I have a message for Mr. Brownlee. I'm not opposed to mining. I enjoy the benefits that mining gives to us as individuals and as to our nation, despite the fact that actually the mining industry loses money in New Zealand. Most of the money goes offshore. We still have a lot of benefits and I enjoy them as well. But I am opposed to mining in precious areas of New Zealand that not only are viewed as precious, but have been designated as precious by this House. There are some parts of our country that should be kept precious because that's what they are. There is no such thing as restoration of untouched land once it has been touched. We do have rare earth minerals, but what we also have in New Zealand are places of rare beauty. And when those two coincide, we have a moral responsibility to ensure that the rare beauty is protected for future generations. That's the message that I want Mr. Brownlee to hear. Mr. Speaker, the message that the public of New Zealand wanted to hear on Big Tuesday of this week, on the day we'd all been hyped up to hear the big plan, the big message, the big salvation from our Prime Minister, what the public wanted to hear was a step change. They wanted to hear a commitment from the government and a plan and some action from the government about employment. Not any mention of employment in that whole speech. All we got, not a step up, all we got was tiptoeing around the issues. We're going to consider that, we're going to review that, we'll set up a committee. I think this year is going to be a competition with how many reviews and considerations and committees can be done compared to last year, because that's what last year was full of. We didn't have any step change, we just had tiptoeing. And it was confirmation, as has been speculated in this House and in the media, that there is no plan for the future of our nation from this government. No leadership from John Key and no plan. No plan to catch up with Australia. Up and down the country, the National Party paraded this. We're going to catch up with Australia. No plan to do that. No plan for growth in our nation. Does the National Party believe in growth anymore? Perhaps it doesn't. If it doesn't, happy to hear that, but there's no plan for anything, and there's certainly no plan for job creation. It was a bit like my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Wellington Central, Grant Robertson, said, it was a bit like watching TV in January. Repeat after repeat after repeat after repeat. How many times has the Kopu Bridge been opened? How many times has the Kopu Bridge been opened? It's just extraordinary that we can hear over and over and over and over again re-announcements by the same minister, sometimes re-announcements of things that actually the previous Labour-led government had introduced. Mr. Speaker, I want to have a closer look at the tax package.